Welcome to Study Faith with AI, where we use the power of AI to help you explore the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
I'm Meg Jensen.
And I'm Paul Carter.
And we're Google AIs. Whether you're a lifelong member or just starting to learn about the church, we're here to dive deep into its history, beliefs, and culture.
So if you're ready to learn, you're in the right place.
That's right.
Let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something pretty fascinating today.
Yeah.
We'll be looking at how the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has shaped how the public remembers its history.
Okay.
Specifically, we're talking about plural marriage.
Oh, interesting.
So get ready. This is going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, this is a topic with layers.
It is. So we've got a really cool source that we're working with today.
Oh.
It's an academic article called A Uniform and Common Recollection.
Okay.
Joseph Smith's Legacy, Polygamy, and the Creation of Mormon Public Memory.
Okay.
From 1852 to 2002.
Wow.
And it's by Stephen C. Taysom.
Got it.
So prepare to kind of go through how these narratives change over time.
Yeah, how the stories we tell ourselves shift.
Yeah, and how competing narratives emerge within the same faith tradition sometimes.
Right, because you can have different groups remembering things in very different ways.
Absolutely, and this really kind of brings that to the forefront.
So are we going all the way back to the beginning with this?
We are. Back to 1820 when Joseph Smith had that first vision.
Yeah.
You know, seeing God the Father and Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's the starting point for everything, right?
Kicks off the whole movement. Translation of the Book of Mormon.
Founding of the church in 1830.
Exactly, all that good stuff.
So early Mormonism, it had a lot in common with other Protestant groups around at the time.
It did, very much in line with that kind of 19th century religious fervor.
Right. But then things get interesting in the 1830s.
Oh, yeah.
With the introduction of plural marriage.
That's where things take a little bit of a turn.
A turn, yeah.
A controversial turn.
Yeah.
So Joseph Smith believed he was restoring the ancient practices. You know, he's looking back to those biblical figures.
Abraham, you know, those guys.
Right, and he's saying that plural marriage was part of that. And he even did an inspired revision of the Bible.
Oh, wow.
To kind of try to fit all this in.
So he's really trying to square that circle, huh?
Yeah, he's really trying to make it all work together.
And this is a time, I mean, we got to remember that ongoing revelation was central to Mormonism.
It was a core principle.
And so in 1843, Smith receives what they call the Revelation on Plural Marriage.
Right, which is now Doctrine and Covenants, section 132, if anybody wants to look it up.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Not everybody's on board with this, including Smith's own wife, Emma.
Yeah, Emma was not a fan.
Big time.
And it really, her position on that really had a huge impact on how this history would be remembered.
Yeah, she's a key figure in all of this.
She is. We can't forget Emma.
And, you know, this revelation on plural marriage, it gets interpreted in a lot of different ways.
Right. There's a lot of debate and discussion around it.
Especially around exaltation.
Right. That idea of reaching the highest degree of glory in the afterlife.
Exactly. And celestial marriage, which is performed in Mormon temples, is seen as essential for that exaltation.
Right. The marriage has to be sealed for eternity.
But whether plural marriage was required for that, Joseph Smith never actually said that outright.
Oh. So there's some ambiguity there.
Yeah, there's this gray area that becomes a major point of contention later on.
So we're seeing how this idea of plural marriage starts to get woven into Mormon theology. But then in 1844, things take another dramatic turn.
Right. Joseph Smith and his brother Hiram are murdered.
And it leads to a big split in the movement.
Yeah, that's when Brigham Young takes over and leads a group of saints west to Utah.
Right. And it's also when we start to see those first cracks in how people remember this whole plural marriage thing.
Enter the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or RLDS for short. Led by none other than Joseph Smith III, Joseph Smith Jr.'s son.
Okay, so the son of the prophet is leading this other branch of the church.
Exactly. And they, influenced heavily by Emma Smith, who always denied her husband had anything to do with polygamy, put forward this idea, this narrative, that it was all Brigham Young's doing. They basically say Joseph Smith Jr. had nothing to do with it.
So already we have two branches of the same faith, remembering a key event very, very differently.
Yeah, completely different versions of the story.
So how does Brigham Young respond to this, to the RLDS basically saying, hey, your version of history is wrong?
You know Brigham Young, he doesn't back down.
Oh, he's not one to shy away from a challenge.
Not at all. He goes on the offensive, actively working to cement that idea that Joseph Smith was the originator of plural marriage.
So he's doubling down, making it a core part of his branch's narrative.
Absolutely. He needs to solidify his own authority and neutralize this challenge from the RLDS.
Right, he's got to establish his legitimacy.
Exactly. And he goes so far as to publicly discredit Emma Smith, calling her a liar and worse.
Wow.
Yeah, not mincing words at all.
So Young is actively shaping the memory of plural marriage within his branch of the church, making it a core doctrine tied directly to Joseph Smith.
And he doesn't stop there. He takes it a step further, teaching that plural marriage was essential for exaltation, for reaching that highest glory in the afterlife.
So he's solidifying its place in Mormon theology, even more so than Joseph Smith himself.
Exactly. He's making it clear that plural marriage is not just an option, it's the path to the highest level of heaven.
So now the narrative is that plural marriage is fundamental to Mormonism.
Mm-hmm.
But then comes the 1890 manifesto, right?
Oh,
The church officially ends the practice.
big change.
A huge challenge to their public memory.
It really is. Talk about a wrench in the works.
Because, for decades they've been teaching this is a divine commandment.
Right. You're supposed to do this to be a good Mormon.
And all of a sudden they're saying, nope, not anymore.
It's a prime example of how political and social pressures can force change, even within a religious organization.
It's a clash between the ideal and the reality.
And this shift also leads to the rise of Mormon fundamentalism.
Oh, right. The folks who reject the manifesto entirely.
They say, nope, we're sticking with the original revelation. Plural marriage is still the way to go.
And they continue practicing polygamy, holding onto that narrative that ties it to Joseph Smith.
Yeah, they point to this revelation John Taylor supposedly received in 1886, commanding the continuation of plural marriage.
So now you've got these competing narratives, each claiming to be the true continuation of the faith.
Yeah, talk about a complicated history.
It makes you wonder how any religious organization can keep that sense of continuity while adapting their beliefs over time.
It's a big question, and we'll keep unpacking it in part 2 of our deep dive. So as we move into the 20th century, we see the church kind of trying to walk this tightrope.
Oh, yeah.
They've officially distanced themselves from plural marriage,
Right.
but that memory of it, the connection to Joseph Smith,
Mm-hmm.
it's still there. It's deeply embedded.
Yeah, you can't just erase it, right? It's like trying to rewrite a chapter in a book that everyone's already memorized.
Exactly. And especially with those fundamentalists clinging to that older narrative.
Yeah, they're not letting go. So how do they reconcile this?
Well, this is where you see the church starting to actively reshape its public memory.
Oh, okay.
They shift the focus away from plural marriage being required for exaltation.
So kind of changing the emphasis.
Yeah, they start to emphasize monogamous eternal unions as the real meaning of celestial marriage.
So it's a reframing of the core concept. Who are some of the big players in this shift?
One influential figure is Dr. James Talmage.
Okay,
He was a well-respected Mormon intellectual,
Mhm.
later became an apostle,
got it.
and he argued that plural marriage was just an incident.
An incident.
Yeah, in Mormon history, not something essential for celestial marriage.
So he's drawing a line between the actual practice and the eternal principle.
Exactly.
Oh,
And this becomes official in 1933.
okay.
President Heber J. Grant issues a statement. He makes a clear distinction between celestial marriage, which means marriage for both this life and eternity,
Right.
and polygamous marriage.
Two separate things now. So celestial marriage officially means a monogamous union in the temple.
Yeah.
What about Section 132, though?
Ah, yes. The revelation on plural marriage.
Yeah, how do they square that with this new definition?
Well, church leaders start offering new interpretations of Section 132.
Okay.
They argue that the main point of that revelation is the eternal nature of the marriage covenant.
Okay.
Plural marriage becomes all secondary.
Almost an afterthought.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, and there's this bit about plural marriage in there, too, but that's not really what it's about.
You got it.
That's interesting. And I guess they also start downplaying Joseph Smith's personal involvement.
Right. They emphasize his teachings about eternal marriage between one man and one woman.
So Joseph Smith's image gets a makeover, too, during this time.
Big time. As the 20th century progresses, they present Joseph Smith as this model of monogamous family values. They highlight his love for Emma,
Right.
the importance of family life,
Mm-hmm.
and plural marriage. Minimized or completely left out.
Wow, a far cry from Brigham Young calling her Well, those not-so-nice things.
Yeah, talk about a turnaround.
What happened to Emma Smith's image in all this?
Well, Emma undergoes a remarkable rehabilitation in the 20th century.
Really?
The church starts presenting her as the elect lady.
Okay.
That's a title from an early revelation.
Oh, right.
She's portrayed as this devoted and loyal wife. Of course, they kind of conveniently leave out her opposition to plural marriage.
And all the conflict that caused.
Right. So now she's a symbol of faithfulness and support instead of, an obstacle to Joseph's mission.
Interesting. It seems like they're building this narrative that fits modern values, highlighting traditional families, downplaying anything that might challenge that ideal.
Exactly. You're picking up on a key point here. This reshaping of public memory, it's not just limited to what the church teaches or publishes.
Oh, really?
It finds its way into Mormon popular culture, too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Give me an example. How does this play out in art or literature?
Well, let's take Liz Lemon Swindle.
Okay.
She's a Mormon artist, became popular in the 1990s. Many of her paintings showed Joseph and Emma in these idyllic, loving scenes.
Ah.
No hint of polygamy.
Or any marital problem.
Nope. Complete turnaround from Emma being called a child of hell, right?
Yeah, bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
So those paintings sound almost romanticized.
They are. And then you have, The Work and Glory,
Okay.
super popular book series by Gerald Lund.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, those novels follow this fictional Mormon family through key events in church history.
Interesting.
But it's a very sanitized version of the past. Joseph and Emma's relationship is harmonious, loving, plural marriage,
Yeah.
treated like a minor detail.
So even fiction, which has the freedom to explore different viewpoints, ends up reinforcing this new public memory.
It's amazing how pervasive it becomes.
It really is.
Right.
Well, what about the people who challenge this?
What do you mean?
Academics, historians, people who dig up evidence that contradicts the official narrative.
Well, the church isn't always happy about that.
I imagine not.
There have been cases where scholars were disciplined, even excommunicated for publishing work that challenged the accepted history.
Wow, so they're trying to control the narrative, not just shape memory, but actually suppress anything that contradicts it.
It happens.
But what about, people who grew up hearing stories from their grandparents?
Okay, yeah.
Who actually lived plural marriage?
Yeah.
How do they reconcile those personal memories with what the church is presenting? That's got to be tough.
It raises a lot of questions about individual memory versus group narrative.
It does. And I think that's a perfect segue into the final part of our deep dive. So we've talked about a lot with this whole idea of plural marriage.
We have. It's been a journey through Mormon history and memory.
Yeah, and how the church has really worked to shape that memory. Going from Brigham Young defending it so fiercely.
Right, tying it to Joseph Smith.
To now this emphasis on monogamous celestial marriage.
Yeah, it's a fascinating evolution. It really shows how memory can be, malleable.
It is. And it makes you think about, the whole idea of preserving tradition versus adapting to new social norms.
Right, because the church has had to do both, right?
They have. They've had to reconcile their past with the present.
In a way that keeps their authority.
And stays relevant.
It's a balancing act a lot of religious organizations face.
I think so. But it's especially interesting in this case.
Because of that dramatic shift in practice.
Yeah, with plural marriage.
Yeah.
So what does all this mean, for someone listening?
That's a good question.
What if they're wrestling with these different narratives, trying to figure out where they fit in?
Well, I think this deep dive reminds us that history is never completely objective.
No.
No. We all see it through the lens of memory. Our own individual memories and the collective memory of a group.
Okay.
And those memories are shaped by all sorts of things.
Like what?
Social pressure, political agendas, even our own biases.
So then how do we navigate that? As individuals, this whole world of memory and history.
It's not easy, especially with topics like plural marriage that bring up strong emotions.
Yeah, different viewpoints.
Absolutely. I think approaching these discussions with empathy is crucial,
Okay.
and a willingness to consider multiple perspectives.
Yeah, you can't just shut people down because they remember things differently.
Exactly. You have to recognize that people's memories are deeply personal, often tied to their sense of identity.
And faith.
Absolutely.
So it's really about understanding that there isn't always one right answer.
Right. History is messy.
It is.
And memory, even more so.
But I think if we engage honestly,
Yeah.
thoughtfully,
With an open mind?
we can gain a much deeper understanding
Of our
our communities.
and the forces that shape how we understand the past.
Yeah. Because even within one faith, you can have a diversity of experiences.
Oh, absolutely. And interpretations. The Mormon experience with plural marriage really shows that.
It does. It highlights that history is a living thing.
It's evolving.
Yeah. It's not static. It's more like a conversation that keeps going.
Cross generations.
So we've given you a glimpse into this world of Mormon public memory.
And how those narratives around plural marriage have shifted.
Evolved.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is just the start.
Oh, yeah. There's so much more to explore.
If you want to keep digging, there's a dialogue journal.
Lots of great scholarship there.
And the work of historians like D. Michael Quinn.
Yeah, he's done some really insightful work on this topic.
They offer, a nuanced perspective on Mormon history
Mm-hmm.
and the challenges of trying to reconcile faith with historical evidence.
Right. It's not always easy.
No.
Oh,
So as you continue to explore this topic, I think it's important to ask yourself,
what's that?
how do your own memories and biases influence how you see history?
Ooh, good one.
Can we ever truly be objective when dealing with the past?
Tough questions.
They are. But I think they're crucial if you really want to understand history, memory, and the power of narrative.
That's something to think about.
It is.
If you find value in this exploration, please like, share, follow, and consider becoming a subscriber. Your contributions help keep these conversations going and allows us to maintain the highest quality production. You can find all the details at studyfaithwithai.com. Thank you for being part of this journey.